This episode is sponsored by Kinsta. Between juggling client meetings, managing your website, and keeping up with everyday tasks, who has the time to stress out about website security? Well, with Kinsta, the technical stuff is taken care of, so you can focus on what you do best. Kinsta provides managed hosting for WordPress, offering lightning-fast load times, top-tier security, and unmatched human-only customer support. Whether you're a business owner, web developer, or running a digital agency, Kinsta makes managing your website easy and efficient. Kinsta provides enterprise-grade security, being one of the few hosting providers for WordPress with SOC 2 and other certifications, guaranteeing the highest level of security for your website. Thanks to their unlimited free expert-led migrations, Kinsta ensures a smooth transition for you from other hosting providers. Customers have reported 200% faster load times post-migration to their platform. What I find cool about Kinsta is their fast and reliable customer service and premium features that are included at no extra cost. Ready to experience Kinsta's hosting for yourself? Get your first month free when you sign up at kinsta.com today. That's KINSTA.com.
All the technical debt that we incurred in the initial pieces essentially led to kind of rebuilding the platform for us 2 years down the line. When we started basically the initial pilots, the key metric that we were looking at was, do students actually use the platform if they like the platform enough to come back on a weekly basis or a daily basis? So, we were designing functionality in our platform around making sure that our users are actually coming back. But it was a complete rebuild that we kind of built out in 2018 and launched in 2019. My name is Shaunak Roy. I'm the founder and CEO of Yellowdig.
This is Code Story, a podcast bringing you interviews with tech visionaries who share in the critical moments of what it takes to change an industry and build and lead a team that has your back. I'm your host, Noah Labhart, and today how Shaunak Roy took an idea and ran to build the platform around active social learning. All this and more on Code Story. This episode is sponsored by Speakeasy. Grow your API user adoption and improve engineering velocity with friction-free integration experiences. With Speakeasy's platform, you can now automatically generate SDKs in 10 languages and Terraform providers in minutes. Visit speakeasy.com/codestory and generate your first SDK for free. This message is sponsored by QA Wolf. QA Wolf gets engineering teams to 80% automated end-to-end test coverage and helps them ship 5 times faster by reducing QA cycles from hours to minutes. With over 100 5-star reviews on G2 and customer testimonials from SalesLoft, Drata, and AutoTrader, you're in good hands. Join the Wolfpack at QAWolf.com. Shaunak Roy spent 10 years in the tech industry before deciding to be a tech entrepreneur. In his undergraduate studies, he studied mechanical engineering and eventually came to the States for his master's. Outside of running a company, he has 2 daughters and enjoys playing games and observing their patterns of learning, which applies to his current venture. Throughout his life, Shaunak has always been fascinated by learning. When looking into building his own startup, he noticed that there wasn't a learning platform built around the mechanics of social media and community. This is the creation story of Yellowdig.
I started Yellowdig back in 2015. So what we do is community-based learning. So if you think about the world we live in, it's entirely social media driven. Right? We spend a whole bunch of time in all sorts of platforms, like depending on your interest, you might be in Facebook, young people are in TikTok and other platforms. But if you think about learning, that experience is very much 20 or 30 years old, where all you do is, get into a classroom environment, could be a physical classroom, could be an online class. And that experience is very much one directional, where, you get into a class, you read your readings, you answer your questions, submit your assignments, get your grade, and you're done. There is a big missing piece in terms of actually building learning communities where people can actually share ideas, ask questions, and help each other out. So Yellowdig brings that experience of social experience, but into the learning environment. And it's a SaaS product. We license our technology to academic institutions around the country. We work with over 100 universities now. Our goal is to essentially transform learning with our SaaS technology. Back in 2015, I knew that I wanted to build a tech company, a SaaS company, and I was looking for, okay, what does excite me enough that I'm going to be sticking around it for a long time. And learning and education is something I always valued a lot. And I also saw that there's a big need in building technology for learning. I kind of came up with this idea that it would be cool to have a social media type platform, but purely for learning. You go to Facebook for connecting with your friends and family. You go to LinkedIn for kind of, checking on your coworkers or your past coworkers or finding new jobs. But there is no platform where you can say that, I'm going to learn about Bitcoin today. Where do you go and where do you actually start finding like-minded people who can interact with you and learn from one another, as opposed to kind of, other social media platforms which are designed for a very specific purpose. But there's nothing like a platform where you can learn, essentially, but it's a social kind of a platform. So that's how we got started back in 2015. And, we have gone through, I would say, at least one big pivot back in 2018 to come to where we are today.
Let's dive into the MVP. So that first product you built, and this is probably pre-pivot, right? So tell me about that MVP. What sort of tools did you use to bring it to life and how long it took you to build?
The MVP was launched in 2016 with a few clients. So I went to some of my earlier contacts in universities. I essentially decided to go to universities because they are the ones who are designing courses and programs for the students. I said, if I can find a way to work with them and build a platform that they would say that they like, that would be a cool spot to be. So 2016 is when we launched the MVP. And the way I went about it is, my background was in technology. Of course, I have done some early building of technology, but I did not have the capacity or the team. So I was a one-man show. So I kind of decided that, okay, I need to hire a few people to build a very basic platform. Essentially, what I did is that, I kind of opened up my PowerPoint presentation, or I think Google Slides or something like that, and drew up like, okay, if I were to design a social platform that looks and feels like social media, but actually is for learning, this is how it would look like. And then went around, found a few developers, essentially offshore developers, to kind of build it for me. Very basic. And then to one of my first users who kind of said that, okay, if you build something, I'll give it a try. And that's what got started in 2016. So basically with some early pilots with the platform.
With those early pilots, you've got to make certain decisions and trade-offs about what you're going to start with, right? What you're going to offer, or even, underneath the hood a little bit, some technical debt you're going to accept. So tell me about some of those decisions and trade-offs you had to make with those early pilots, the MVP, et cetera, and how you coped with those decisions.
The long story there is, or maybe the short version of the story is that all the technical debt that we incurred in the initial pieces essentially led to kind of rebuilding the platform for us 2 years down the line. When we started basically the initial pilots, the key metric that we were looking at was, do students actually use the platform, if they like the platform enough, to come back to the platform on a weekly basis or a daily basis. So, we were designing functionality in our platform around making sure that our users are actually coming back. So we came up with ideas around gameful learning, so that some amount of gamification so that they come back. We had some features around for instructors to be able to manage some of those communities, because those become also, some of the key aspects of our platform later on. We did that. So, I think what happened for us was, we made some right decisions around kind of, the initial feature set to be able to get into some of the early clients so that they converted from pilot to paid clients. But what ended up happening was that, and this is probably one of my learnings is that, kind of building on that MVP versus actually rebuilding the platform very quickly after we have got the initial traction was slightly delayed for us. So we spent about a couple of years to actually grow that product in the market. But eventually we ran into these challenges that some of the enterprise clients who came around and said that, okay, we are going to now, expand it from a few courses to our entire institution. That's when the product started failing. So that's the time we had to go back to the drawing board almost and kind of say that, okay, if we were to redesign the whole thing with the right kind of tools, with the right back end and front end technologies and everything else, how would we do it? And we ended up actually rebuilding the platform, like literally writing, completely a new platform, but of course, like taking all the learnings from the old platform. But it was a complete rebuild that we kind of built out in 2018 and launched in 2019.
This episode is sponsored by Speakeasy. Whether you're growing the user adoption of your public API or streamlining internal development, SDKs can turn the chore of API integration into effortless implementation. Unburden your API users from guessing their way around your API while keeping your team focused on your product. Shorten the time to live integration and provide a delightful experience for your customers. With Speakeasy's platform, you can now automatically generate up-to-date, robust, idiomatic SDKs in 10 languages and Terraform providers in just a matter of minutes. SDKs are feature-rich with type safety, auto-retries, and pagination. Everything you need to give your API the developer experience it deserves. Deliver a premium API experience without the premium price tag. Visit speakeasy.com/codestory to get started and generate your first SDK for free. This message is sponsored by Snaptrade. Link in user brokerage accounts and build world-class investing experiences with Snaptrade's unified brokerage API. With over $12 billion in connected assets and over 300,000 connected accounts, Snaptrade's API quality and developer experience are second to none. Snaptrade is SOC 2 certified and uses industry-leading security practices. Developers can use the company's official client SDKs to build investing experiences in minutes without the limitations of traditional aggregators. Get started for free today by visiting snaptrade.com/codestory. Were there any sort of technological or architectural changes that you deployed with that pivot, or product changes? Tell me a little bit about that.
Yeah, I would say all of that. Architecturally, of course, we had the advantage now. We started to realize that what are the constraints we had around our product. Like, for example, the product is a high-use product, right? So, we have our users coming and creating a lot of content. Think about video content or all sorts of image or text content that they kind of create like any other social media platform. So we realized some of the constraints we had around managing, rapidly growing data on our platform. So, choosing the right database. So we kind of, when we were replatforming, we chose a new database, which was much more suitable for this kind of an application. We also chose some front-end technologies, especially social media. The front-end tech has evolved very quickly over the last 5 years. So we kind of decided to choose some new, frameworks that was much more suitable for what we were building. So I think the good thing was that all the initial experimentation we were doing with our MVP kind of led to the right technology choices for us when we were rebuilding it. And we made the hard choice of rebuilding it, as you said, as opposed to kind of just refactoring the code base. That helped us to kind of really make sure that we choose the right technologies. And from a feature standpoint, honestly, like 2 years of data on the MVP was a lot of insights into how our users would like to use the platform. So, that also kind of helped us to build a product in a way that can scale. Like literally the one that we launched in 2019 is the one that we want to keep it for a long time, because everything is kind of built in a way which can scale nicely and properly, as opposed to we kind of constantly having to make like technology choices that kind of slows us down.
From that point of the pivot, how did you progress the product? How did you mature it? And I think really to wrap that question in a box, I'm interested in how you built your roadmap and decided, okay, this is the next most important thing to build.
It's a great question. It's a constant challenge for us, in terms of kind of really thinking about what to build and not to build. One thing I learned early on is that, just because, we want to build something doesn't mean it's going to add value to the product. So the framework that we have adopted since our pivot is, the users or our clients are the biggest voice in terms of what gets built. We are getting feedback from a variety of sources, like our users give us feedback who are actually using the platform. Also our salespeople, our client success team, our tech team has their own vision. So they're always constants. We have more ideas that we can build essentially at this point, but the prioritization, the way we do this is essentially the first thing is what is our user saying is always the highest voice, and the second thing is does that fit into the philosophy that we have for the product? Sometimes users come with ideas which are great. I think, they would definitely benefit from, but that might take us down a direction for the product that we do not kind of buy into. Like, to give an example, there is, we are building a social learning app, which is quite different from, let's say, a project management app or a social media app. So, our goal is to drive better learning for our users. And, we have seen enough evidence that certain types of features help in learning, where some other types of features, even though they are useful for our users, may not lead to the right outcome for us. And we have some conviction around it based on the data that we have seen. So sometimes when our users will say, hey, can you build this, even though they are asking for it, but it doesn't drive the right learning outcome for us, which is one of our biggest metric as a company, we would probably say no to that. So to answer your question, I mean, I would say it's more art than science, and it's a constant, like a sausage making process for us. But we try to prioritize that way, which is our users comes first, and then our philosophy comes second in terms of building the product. And then after that comes all sorts of other needs that we need in terms of kind of, scalability or security and many other things that our clients are asking to make sure that the product is safe and secure.
So let's switch to team then. So how did you build your team? And, what did you look for in those people to indicate that they are the winning horses to join you?
What I would say is that when I started the company back in 2015, my initial team was a team of developers, designers who had fully outsourced. And one key decision we made when we replatformed is that our entire team has to be in-house, because there are a lot of points of views around it. Of course, you can add developers to the team who can build things fast, but what we see valuable is actually constantly kind of refining feature sets as opposed to building new features is where we have seen success. And it's very difficult to have refinement or improvement without somebody who is fully bought into the company. So that's kind of what was one decision we made, is that we do not have people who are not fully dedicated to the company. Even if you have contractors on the company or on our team, we make sure that they're fully dedicated, fully bought into the mission, and they're almost like an employee as opposed to from a third party who's just building a feature for us. So that's the first thing I think that has worked for us, that one decision. The other thing we look for is, especially skills are important, of course, because, we are using certain technologies. We want people who are competent in those areas, and they have some prior knowledge in those areas. That's helpful. But always we look for people who can learn quickly, because, these things keep on changing fast. But more importantly, I think, having a clear interest in what we are building. We are not just another software company, because we are working closely with educators day in, day out, students, and, we look for people who has a lot of interest in that problem, so that they are willing to spend the time to be able to kind of understand the needs of our users deeply, and actually have the enough passion for it to kind of dedicate themselves to be able to solve them deeply, is something that we look for. So everybody in the team right now, and it's not that we always get those people. I mean, sometimes people come in and they spend a few months, and they decide that, okay, it's not really my cup of tea, and they can move on. But people who stick around with us are the ones who are deeply kind of care about the problem enough to be able to kind of go beyond the last mile, and kind of go beyond what the ask is, to be able to kind of create the right experience for our users.
This message is sponsored by QA Wolf. If slow QA processes bottleneck your software engineering team, and you're releasing slower because of it, you need a solution. You need QA Wolf. QA Wolf gets engineering teams to 80% automated end-to-end test coverage, and helps them ship 5 times faster by reducing QA cycles from hours to minutes. With over 100 5-star reviews on G2 and customer testimonials from SalesLoft, Drata, AutoTrader, and many more, you're in good hands. Ready to ship faster with fewer bugs? Join the Wolf Pack, at QAWolf.com to see if they can help you squash the QA bottleneck. This message is sponsored by SnapTrade. Link in-user brokerage accounts and build world-class investing experiences with SnapTrade's unified brokerage API. With over $12 billion in connected assets and over 300,000 connected accounts, SnapTrade's API quality and developer experience are second to none. SnapTrade is SOC 2 certified and uses industry-leading security practices. Developers can use the company's official client SDKs to build investing experiences in minutes without the limitations of traditional aggregators. Get started for free today by visiting snaptrade.com/codestory. This episode is sponsored by Vanta. You're a startup founder. Finding product market fit is probably your number one priority. But to land bigger customers, you also need security compliance. And obtaining your SOC 2 or ISO 27001 certification can open those big doors. But they take time and energy, pulling you away from building and shipping. And that's where Vanta comes in. Vanta is the all-in-one compliance solution helping startups like yours get audit ready and build a strong security foundation quickly and painlessly. How, you ask? Vanta automates the manual security tasks that slow you down, helping you streamline your audit. And the platform connects you with trusted VCSOs to build your program, auditors to get you through audits quickly, and a marketplace for essentials like pen testing. Join over 8,000 companies, including many Y Combinator and Techstars startups who trust Vanta. Simplify compliance and get $1,000 off at vanta.com/codestory. That's VANTA.com/codestory. Let's flip to scalability then. And you've mentioned it a few times in your answers, and so I believe you're excited to answer this question. So I'm gonna lay it on you. So, did you build this to scale efficiently from day one, or have you been fighting this as you grow? And if the latter, how?
The MVP that we launched in 2015, it was a factor that scalability wasn't the biggest question in my mind. The biggest question was, does this even work? Or would people actually use this thing? Or have we really understood the problem properly was the main question. So the MVP was all about really watching the behavior of our users to be able to kind of understand the problem space better. So that was a goal. And as a result, the product wasn't scalable. And, looking back, I do believe that's the right thing to do, is to focus on the user and the value prop as opposed to actual technology choices in an MVP, because you want to, experiment quickly enough to get to the problem or the solution faster, I think is the right goal. The only thing I realized from that experience is that, as soon as you have a good enough handle around the problem or the solution, it's important to quickly pivot into actually thinking about scalability. And what happened for us is that we tried to scale an MVP product into a scale solution, and we kind of spent a couple of years doing that, and we realized that wasn't the right path. So that's why we had to kind of re-platform, in 2018, 2019. But when we re-platformed, I think the first thing we thought about is that we still have to think about our users, right? Because at the end of the day, when we are re-platforming or rebuilding a product, the first question is that would users still use it? Because a lot of things change when you re-platform. So that was always the part. But I would say from a scalability point of view, we kind of thought about the bigger blocks more than the smaller blocks. Like the biggest thing we thought about is that, okay, are we going to choose the right technology choices? Like the database technology that we are choosing, we have to stick around it for a long time. Are those the right choices for us? So we spend a lot of time thinking about those choices as opposed to actually using the technology in the right way. So, sometimes we will kind of build a part of our product in a way so that we have covered the big block, which is the right technology, and we have deployed in the right way, but kind of knowing in the back of our mind that, if this thing is actually scaling, like a couple of years down the line, we may have to do this thing, which is probably something we are not doing right now. So it's always that, which is almost like a balancing act where, we are making sure the big blocks are well taken care of, but the small blocks can wait. And that's what we have been doing for the last 3 years as we are building this app.
Well, as you step out on the balcony and you look across all that you've built, what are you most proud of?
The most exciting thing for myself and our team is when we hear from our users that they love the experience. I think that's something we have been trying to build right from day one, and that has a lot of things. I think the reason that is we are most proud about that experience, or the feedback that we are getting, or the testimonials or whatnot. In Twitter, somebody goes and says they love Yellowdig because of this reason. Because, that was a complex problem. That was the hardest thing for us to pull off, I believe. Because, in education, the space that we are in, there are quite a few things has to work in our favor to be able to create the right experience. Like, firstly, of course, the technology, the product has to be well designed and, create the right kind of user experience. So that's number one. The second is that the gatekeepers, who are educators who have years and years of research experience and teaching experience, need to feel that our product is actually adding value into their courses and programs that they're using us. And finally, I would say is that there are many other technologies out there right now which is trying to improve education, and we being one which is like, okay, people are actually calling us out as something that they like, as opposed to 20 other things that they're using for their teaching and learning. I think, which is why I feel that anytime I hear from any user who is speaking good things about the product or the company or some experience they had with our client success team, on their own basis without being kind of begging for it, like they're going into Twitter or somewhere else, I think those moments are the most exciting for us.
Well, let's flip the script a little bit, Shaunak. Tell me about a mistake you made and how you and your team responded to it.
When we launched, when we launched the second version of the product in 2019, which is the technology was, way superior, the experience was way better, and, it had all the bells and whistles that we needed to be kind of grow our client base. One of the things that we underestimated was the value of client success. What I mean by that is, when somebody adopts our technology, just because our technology is designed in a way which should be very simple to use and get started with, doesn't mean that people actually pay the attention or understand how to even get started with it. So we had the first year after the launch of the next version, especially in 2019, 2020, we had a lot of situations where we'll have clients come back to us saying that, oh, I tried this product, but I didn't really see the value, or I didn't really see why this is better than something else I'm using. And we used to be like, what happened? And part of the immediate response is that, okay, maybe you are not the right user for this technology. Maybe you should just use what you were using because we are better and this is better and you should get it. But then I realized is that it's so important to kind of really understand the context of the clients and then really feel for themselves, like have that kind of deeper understanding, so that we not just kind of look the world from our product standpoint and why is it better, but from a client standpoint, what else they are using and where exactly we fit into their value prop and why we have to really pay attention to that and kind of help them kind of through that journey of kind of adopting our technology is something that we ignored. I would say, or at least personally, I didn't value enough, when we got started. But I think the good thing that happened for us is, we hired the right team members who were quite passionate about it, and they kind of went around and created the right processes and the right systems, hired the right team members to be able to kind of handle that. So that's an area I think we do quite well, to the point that people actually point us out as a vendor in the market, which is doing exceptionally good client success. But that wasn't the case even 2 years back.
So, Shaunak, what does the future look like for the product and for your team?
Our goal is to continue to build on this problem that we are solving, which is building communities in every learning environment. So the vision that we have is, today, if you think about learning, doesn't matter in what phase of life, like from K-12 to higher education to corporate training, learning today is very much individualized, where people almost have to go to websites and kind of learn on their own. But there is this tremendous opportunity for people to actually learn together with people who have the same interest. And, that could be part of every learning design. So our vision is to make Yellowdig available and work in every learning environment where we can build communities and help learners connect with like-minded people and kind of have lots of fun actually through the learning process. So that's the vision we have as a company. And our future is to attract the right team members as we scale and the right clients for us to kind of get to that point. One thing I'll say is that education is a very mature and very traditional industry. It doesn't change overnight. So, I think one of the things that we are hoping to do is to be patient with our clients and be able to kind of show them the value of the product that we have and kind of take them through the journey. So, if we can take them there in the next 5-10 years, I would be very happy.
Let's switch to you, Shaunak. Who influences the way that you work? Name a person you look up to and why.
A couple of people comes to mind. And one, of course, I've been a huge fan of Steve Jobs. I love this idea of, having a product-driven innovation mindset, which I think he's one of the best I've ever seen. Whenever I'm thinking about building, creating any new product or service, I always think about kind of the way his framework I've seen, at least I've kind of read his book or kind of I've seen how he has approached things, influences me. Simplicity, customer focus, creating value through good design, those kind of philosophies I completely love. The other person comes to my mind is, kind of from a leadership standpoint, of course, it might be a cliche, is like, Elon Musk I'm a big fan of him because I feel that, the most interesting thing is that he has taken very traditional sectors and kind of pure perseverance. He has kind of transformed them, which is, of course, I'm not saying I'll be ever there, but I think that gives me the motivation to actually stick on to education and kind of try to transform it, even though it's hard, but I think it's kind of well worth it.
We talked about a mistake, but a little bit different spin. If you could go back to the beginning, what would you do differently? Or where would you consider taking a different approach?
One thing I feel is that, of course, I've been on this journey for 7 years now. So, one of the big things I always think about is, what can it be done shorter? Like, can it be done in 2 years as opposed to 7 years? And some of those I covered, of course, one mistake is, I would say is, thing that I would do differently if I were to redo it is essentially, do the initial MVP, test it, but not try to grow the MVP into a full-fledged product, but actually quickly think about should we kind of rebuild the MVP early on, maybe in the first couple of years, as opposed to waiting for 2-3 years and try to grow the business. I think that took us a bunch of years that we could have saved if I were to redo it. The other thing I would say is that, also thinking about, kind of the end game in mind, because, the approach we took in building Yellowdig was mostly very, micro to macro, which is kind of trying to solve the problem and then trying to understand the space we are working in. And then over time, we realized how to even sell to, higher education, which was a completely new thing for me when I started. Like, we didn't know how to even sell into higher education, even though we had a product in higher education. So if I were to redo this in education, I would probably or any other industry, I would spend more time understanding the sector more, maybe connecting with more people who have sold products and services right from day one, because that wasn't so much of a focus for me. I was overly focused on the user and the problem, but I think kind of having a little bigger picture right from day one and trying to make those connections early on, especially in areas where I didn't have as much of experience, would have saved me time. Probably I'll kind of do that more, if I'm starting another venture.
So last question, Shaunak. So you're getting on a plane and you're sitting next to a young entrepreneur who's built the next big thing. They're jazzed about it. They can't wait to show it off to the world and can't wait to show it off to you right there on the plane. What advice do you give that person, having gone down this road a bit?
I'm always excited when, entrepreneurs, young or old, and whoever is starting a new company or a new venture, is that I would say the biggest thing I'll say is that, look, it might sound very hard in the beginning because the first couple of years is quite tough, especially as a first-time entrepreneur, because you're trying to figure out everything, like not only the company and the problem, but also about yourself, because, part of the journey as an entrepreneur is to actually know yourself, your strengths and weaknesses, which is something, we think we know, but, it's a reality test, right in the market in real time. All I would say is that, look, I mean, all of that might be quite hard in the first couple of years, but if you can make through that and kind of, stick to it for long enough, I think it works out. It's not that hard. That hard meaning to kind of start to kind of figure things out and start to, grow a business. So I would say, maintain patience. Doesn't matter where things are, because I think over time it works out. The other thing I'll also say is that, which I kind of sometimes I feel is, not to spend too much time on the glory side, because it's easy to get caught up in, everything that's happening and all these, people are starting companies and things are getting launched and things happens. And it kind of, it almost like it can get distracting at some point, because it's always like, oh, am I working on the right problem, or do I have the right team, and this and that? And I would say, like, rather than kind of really, questioning all the time, rather than kind of focusing on one thing that you're truly passionate about and just kind of go for it. And, over time you may end up building something meaningful. May not be exactly what you thought, but it might be more meaningful than not doing anything, essentially. So, so, I mean, keeping a little more focus on, what you're passionate about, as opposed to kind of getting distracted about all this buzz that always happens around when you're building a company.
I really like what you said about more meaning by doing something than not doing anything. I think that's fantastic advice. Well, Shaunak, thank you for being on the show today. Thank you for telling the creation story of Yellow Dig.
No, thank you so much.
And this concludes another chapter of Code Story. Code Story is hosted and produced by Noah Labhart. Be sure to subscribe on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or the podcasting app of your choice. Support the show on patreon.com/codestory for just $5 to $10 a month. And when you get a chance, leave us a review. Both things help us out tremendously. And thanks again for listening.